My name is Michael. I'm 34 years old, and I can honestly say that guilt is the quietest feeling there is. She doesn't scream, she doesn't push, no brakes, nothing. But it settles. Stay there, between the stomach and chest, breathing together with you, occupying spaces that previously belonged to other things, like tranquility, or I am. I've been working as a night carer in a nursing home on the outskirts of Ashcroft for 5 years, a small town in Colorado, the kind where everyone pretends not to see the decay piling up in the corners. The place is called Residence Aurora, a name that is too beautiful for what it really is. Peeling walls, corridors too long, tiles as cold as a morgue, and a constant smell of disinfectant mixed with something old. I never cared much about it. I always liked the silence of the morning, the predictability of routines, the fact that the only people who saw me there were those who, most of the time, didn't really know where they were. It was a way to disappear without leaving the map, and that was exactly what I needed. But everything changed when room 302 started appearing in my life. In theory, that room should be unoccupied, closed since last October, after the last resident died in her sleep. Nobody wanted to use it after that. The cleaning staff said that the air in there was strange, heavy. Bullshit, of course. Only that in the last few weeks, every time I made my rounds around the B and C wings, especially after 3 in the morning, I found the window of 302 open. Always the same thing, the gaping crack, the white curtain dancing in a wind that I no longer felt it anywhere in that building. The first time, I thought it was a mistake from a day shift employee. I closed and moved on with my life. On Monday, I thought that one of the old people was wandering around, but the third time, I started to feel that feeling. He knows when you enter a room, and you get the impression that someone was there just seconds before you. That absent presence, that was it. And then, that Wednesday, I saw it for the first time, and I swear on everything I have that room 302 was locked the night before. But that early morning, rainy, freezing, with the drops drumming on the windows of the hallway like impatient fingers, the door to 302 was ajar, and inside, under the dim light of the wall lamp, a woman sat on the edge of the bed. Property, on your back. She was wearing a light blue sweater, her hair tied in a loose bun, and her head slightly tilted, as if he was about to say something, but he didn't say it. She looked at the open window, always the window. "Mom?" I called, trying to sound professional, although my voice came out almost in a whisper. "It is good too." She didn't respond. I took a deep breath and entered. The footsteps echoed in a silence that seemed thicker there, within. The temperature, I don't know how to explain. It was different, a cold without origin, as if the time itself had cooled. In that space. "Are you feeling anything? Pain? Do you need help?" Nothing. I walked around carefully until I saw it head on, and when I looked at her face, my body whole thing froze, because I knew that face. It was impossible, but it was true. She looked like my mother. Not the mother I visited once a year, not the bitter woman who kicked me out home after the fight. She was the mother I remembered from childhood, calm, serene, with that sweet look, but with a strange detail. She was looking through me, as if he saw me, from another place, from another time. I started to speak, but she just slowly turned her face away and murmured, "There's still time, Daniel." My spine shivered. I took 2 steps back, the heart beating so loudly that it felt like someone was drumming on my chest from the inside. "How do you know my name?" She didn't respond. He just looked out the window again. That night, I left my room as if I was in a trance. I locked the door behind me. And yet, for the rest of the shift, I felt like someone was telling me, observed, that there was something in the mirrors, something in the reflections in the glass, something that expected, something he knew too much. At the end of the day, before leaving, I went back to 302. The door was locked. When I entered, there was no one inside, but the window was open again. That morning, when I got home, I found a letter in the mailbox. Ira of my sister, who I hadn't spoken to in years. Our mother, the real one, had suffered a small stroke. I was in the hospital. I asked if I would want to see her before things got worse. After that night, I began to feel like I was no longer alone in my own thoughts. Do you know when you remember something and suddenly realize that the memory is different? like someone re-edited the scene while you were sleeping. That's how it started. Small changes to the details of my life, subtle enough for me to doubt myself, but strange enough to make me uneasy. For example, I always had a scar on my right hand from when I fell off my bicycle at 8 years. One night after leaving 302, I looked at my hand and it was clean, without no brand, as if that had never happened. The next morning, the scar was back. The other week, I realized that my ex-girlfriend, Rachel, the one with who I lived with for 2 years, seemed to have disappeared from all the photos. Not only from my hammocks, but the cardboard boxes in the closet, the old picture frames, even the memories. Sometimes when I tried to remember her face, there was a blur, an emptiness, and every time something like this happened, the window in room 302 was open. I tried to ignore it. I swear I tried. But that woman sitting on the edge of the bed kept appearing, always the same way, always looking out the window like I'm waiting something. Sometimes he would turn his face slowly and speak in loose sentences, like whispers, pulled from another life. You chose to run away. Michael, what if you had stayed that day? She's still waiting for you in the room with the lights off. I didn't know who she was talking about. Rachel, my mom, Emily, my sister. I started to lose control of time. Sometimes during the shift, he would blink his eyes and I realized that almost an hour had passed. Other times I was sure I was alone in the hallway until he saw a shadow move at the end, behind the glass door, a motionless silhouette, as if waiting for me to come closer. And the more I tried to avoid 302, the more it seemed to call to me. One particularly silent dawn, I went to do my rounds and found all the C-wing doors open. All. As if the rooms had been emptied in one only sigh. The corridor was plunged into a bluish gloom. The nightlights flickered as if they were afraid of getting lit. I closed the doors one by one, trying to stay calm. But when I got to the end of the hallway, the door to 302 wasn't there. It was just open. It was wide. Open. And for the first time, the woman was not sitting on the bed. She was standing, facing me. The heart almost stopped, but I couldn't look away. She watched me with a calm that seemed cruel, as if he knew everything about me. And then he said, "You can come back. Just choose." "Back where?" I asked, almost voiceless. She took a step forward. "For the night when everything fell apart. For a choice you didn't have the courage to make." I stayed there, standing still. Something inside me wanted to run, scream. But a strange part, almost familiar, I wanted to hear it until the end. She extended her hand, the long, pale fingers with paper-thin skin. At the bottom of in her palm, there was a yellowed photo. When I looked, I almost lost my breath. It was a photo of me and my mother in the backyard of the house where I grew up, on the day I'm gone forever, the day of our last fight, the day she told me that if I walked out that door, I never had to come back. And I left. I really left. I never apologized. I never went back. You can change, Michael, but every change requires a loss. What kind of loss? She didn't respond. He just pointed behind me. I turned slowly and saw the corridor empty, dark, too long to be real, and in it, a figure from the back, a girl, brown hair, braided. I was hand in hand with someone taller, a man. I couldn't see their faces, but I knew who they were. My sister and me. The past was there, still, waiting. And behind me, the woman from 302 murmured, "Choose carefully. Not all windows can be closed once opened." The next morning when I woke up, I was in my bed, in a cold sweat, with my clothes on, of the asylum still in the body. The window in my room, the one in the apartment where I've lived for 5 years, was open, and on the nightstand there was a photo, the same, yellowish, with my mother smiling, like that old afternoon. Only now, I wasn't in it anymore. That photo on the nightstand stayed, there for days. I tried to ignore it. I played in one drawer, I burned one copy, tore another, but every morning she would reappear, always the same image. My mother smiling alone in the backyard. I was no longer there side of her. It was as if I had been erased from memory, and with each new shift at Aurora Residence, room 302 seemed more alive, more full, as if breathing. Sometimes I smelled lavender perfume coming out of my mouth. Under the door, the same one my mother used. Other, times I listened to old music very quietly, coming from inside, until one night everything came to a head rupture. It was Friday. The sky outside was covered in thick clouds, and a low-lying fog it had swallowed the street like a dirty cotton blanket. As soon as I joined the shift, I noticed that the clocks were stopped. All. The one at reception, the one on the wall of Wing B, even my pulse read 3 hours and 17 minutes, and it didn't move. Wing C was dark, even with the switches on. The light seemed to be sucked in by the walls, and at the end of the hall, 302 was completely open. This time I went in without hesitation. The woman was standing next to the bed, looking at me as if she already knew my decision. "Are you ready?" she asked. "I don't know what you are. I don't know if I'm crazy, if this is a nightmare, but if there is even a chance to come back, to do something different, I want it." She didn't respond right away. He just walked to the window and opened it. Outside, there was no city, no streets, no streetlights, just liquid living darkness with distant points of light flickering like lighthouses in a sea of fog, and in the middle of it, a single thing visible, a house, old, surrounded by dry trees, with a sloping roof and a wooden balcony, the house where I grew up. My throat dried up. "You can come in," she said, still looking outside. "What if I go in?" She turned to me. For the first time, he smiled, a sad, resigned smile. "You will live what you didn't live, but you will lose what you have now. What if I refuse? The window closes, and all that will be left will be regret." I stood still, staring at that world that shouldn't exist. The lights in the house my childhood blinked as if they were calling me. The balcony creaked even at a distance. A shadow moved inside the house. Someone was waiting for me there. My mum, my childhood. "You!" I felt the woman's eyes on me. I could almost hear my heart beating in the silence. "And if I get in, am I still me?" She didn't respond. Instead, he extended his hand. "Choose, Michael." And that's when I heard my sister's voice. "Michael, don't leave." I turned sharply. It was there, in the room, Emily, but not as an adult, as child, with teary eyes and shaking hands, like the night I ran away from home after the last fight, when she grabbed me by the shirt and said, "Stay." USA, I pushed, and I left. Now, she was there again, the same voice, the same order, and I understood. Room 302 didn't just offer me a chance to change. He was testing me. I could run away again, choose the easiest path, erase my pain, me hide in the comfort of a rewritten memory, or I could stay, to accept. I took a deep breath. I turned to the woman, closed the window. She didn't move a muscle. He is sure. Yes. She stared at me for a moment, then walked to the window and closed it with a click. Dry. At the same moment, the light in the room flickered violently. The air became heavy, dense, like I was being pressured for all the mistakes I made. And before the darkness took me completely, I heard her voice for the last time. "Not every regret needs to turn into prison, but it needs to be seen." I woke up in the asylum, sitting on the floor in the hallway. The clock showed 5 hours and 42 minutes. The lights were normal. Room 302, locked, sealed with tape, as if no one had entered there months ago. Nobody remembered the woman. Neither do the employees, neither do the records. But I knew. Did you know that the window been open? And that for the first time in a long time, I closed it by my own choice. After that night, I never saw the woman in room 302 again, nor the room. The following week, Aurora residents announced structural renovations. When I returned to my shift, I found Wing C closed off, covered with plastic sheets and smelling of fresh paint. The 302, according to the new manager, never existed. He pulled out the blueprint of the building and showed me with all the confidence of someone who has never seen a ghost. Wing C ended at 301, but I knew I got in there, who had sat on the edge of that bed, faced that window and was invited to cross it. I didn't talk to anyone about it. Who would believe? A lonely night caretaker, seeing windows that don't exist, hearing voices from the past and hallucinating the own childhood. They would admit me, or worse, they would laugh. And what I experienced doesn't deserve to be laughed. It was real, but reality has changed in a way that can't be explained in easy words. At first I thought nothing had changed. My house was still the same. My schedules, my old car, my rude neighbors, but little by little, the small differences began to appear. A picture frame on the shelf with a photo I didn't remember taking, me and my mother older having coffee in a cafe. The image was so clear, so real, that I could hear the clinking of the spoon hitting the cup, but I didn't remember of that day. I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, the voice on the other end, "Hi, this is Emily. Is everything okay there?" It was my sister. The voice was the same, but something about it sounded more lighter, as if years of hurt had dissolved without me knowing. We talked for 40 minutes. Me said that Mom was getting better, that the physiotherapist was good people, that the bouts of confusion were decreasing. He asked if I wanted to visit, and for the first time in many years, I said yes, and I meant it. On the way to the hospital, I found myself remembering things that were previously forgotten, erased. A Sunday lunch that never happened, a hug from my mother in the 30th birthday, Emily's laugh while we watched a movie one afternoon rainy. It was as if time had warped at some point, as if when closing 302's window, I had refused to rewrite the past, but still, something had forgiven me for him. At the hospital, I saw my mother lying on the gurney, more fragile than I remembered, but with her living eyes. She looked at me for a few seconds before smiling. "You came," he said, in a hoarse but firm voice. I held her hand, and all I could say was, "This time, I stayed." She didn't ask anything else. There was no need. Whatever was between us, for a moment it disappeared, as if time had been suspended, as if that window still existed somewhere, and the simple fact of choosing not to cross it had healed some invisible wound between us. After that, things changed subtly. I started walking differently, speak differently, not as another person, but as someone who finally decided to stop running away. I changed shifts at the nursing home. I asked to work in the morning. The new manager accepted without blink, maybe even relieved to get those long mornings out of my system. I knew new residents, new routines. The Aurora is no longer the hiding place where I sank for years. It became just my job, but room 302 never really left me. Sometimes I still dream about him. On very silent nights, I wake up with the impression of that my bedroom window is open. Even though I'm sure I've locked it before sleeping, I no longer feel afraid, not like before. Now I understand that the real terror was not the supernatural. It was what life left pending, the conversations not had, the pardons not ordered, the choices avoided by pride, for cowardice, for silence. The woman in 302, if she was a woman, didn't come to scare me, came to show me, give me a mirror, put myself in front of myself and ask, what if you had stayed? The answer was not given to me. I was the one who had to give it, and I still give, every day. Today, when I walk through the lighted corridors of the asylum, I hear laughter, sighs, stories repeated by the elderly, and some forgotten truths that they only whisper when they think no one is listening. I think this is what we become over time, echo of the choices we made or didn't make, and sometimes, in some corner of the world, a window opens for us to look at inside with courage, with regret perhaps, but also with the chance to change. Not all pain needs to last forever. Not every past needs to be prison. And some windows, they only exist to remind us that there is still time.